Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for holding this very important hearing, and thanks for the opportunity to testify today. Mr. Chairman, Humanity United combats modern slavery by building effective networks, engaging the private sector, and strengthening the anti-slavery advocacy movement, including support for the Alliance to End Slavery and Trafficking. Mr. Chairman, as you said, with 2/3 or more of the profits from modern slavery coming from sex trafficking and 2/3 of the victims subject to labor trafficking, we must work urgently to combat human trafficking in all its forms. Each of the victims, Mr. Chairman, deserves to become a survivor, and I feel privileged to be testifying alongside two of them today. And I think the kind of testimony and experiences they can bring demonstrate why the legislation that Ms. Wawarntu just mentioned on having a Survivor Advisory Council is very important, so that the executive branch can really hear in a very specific way from survivors moving forward. Mr. Chairman, turning to more specific solutions, I first want to focus on foreign labor recruiters. A lot has been said about that. We heard a lot about it from the last panel, as well as the panel here. And we talk in my testimony about the whole system of foreign labor recruiting, including corruption, which I think Senator Risch was very correct in terms of identifying that as a key issue. But there are a number of ways that we can address it. First is having these issues come out more in the open and having a more frank discussion. The TIP report was mentioned earlier and also in the testimony of my fellow panelists. It can really bring a lot of information to light. It can help identify which countries are the key countries that need to be focused on. It can analyze the commitment of those governments to trying to end human trafficking, where perhaps more pressure needs to be brought, and it also points out sensible solutions. But this report is only as valuable as it is accurate. And as Senator Rubio pointed out, we've had a vacancy in the TIP ambassador slot. We're about to start report season, where the information that James and others are going to provide are going to start to be looked at. And I'm very worried that if we don't have someone in that position, then those who want to downplay abuses in certain countries are likely to be successful, and we won't have a report that has as much integrity. And I'd ask unanimous consent that a piece that I just wrote on the Hill on this matter, which lays out certain criteria, be put in the record. Second, Mr. Chairman, governments can require greater transparency and regulate foreign labor recruiters. The Forte Act that Chandra just mentioned is very important. It lays out transparency, bans fees, and creates a regulatory structure. And we also have the Executive Order 13627 on strengthening protections against trafficking persons in federal contracts, which has similar provisions, and this committee really needs to make sure that that's implemented. And one of the most important reasons is U.S. leadership. If we can demonstrate that we're trying to dive down into these issues, then it gives us much better moral authority to try to address these issues with other governments. Third, technology can play a role in providing worker information. One such platform has recently been developed, Contratados. Think of this as the mobile application Yelp, but for foreign labor recruiters and for companies. It allows workers to rate companies and employers and to warn other workers of bad experiences. A lot has been said about supply chains. The work is hard to look at these supply chains, and we can try to help companies think about their supply chains. For example, the Coalition for Immokalee Workers works, that was mentioned by Ms. Bader-Blau, works directly with workers, growers, corporations to together eliminate slavery and the sexual abuse that comes with it from tomato fields in Florida. Technology and big data was mentioned. Verite, which is a leader in issues of looking at labor, and Palantir Technologies, which is a big data analytics company that's used across many areas of law enforcement, are partnering to pilot a potentially transformative analytical product that will enable companies to unravel complex labor supply chains and identify risks of human trafficking and forced labor. There are other kinds of private sector and civil society partnerships that can work across sectors. For example, in the sustainability area, there's a lot of work been done to try to prevent rainforests from being cut down in order to preserve the rainforest. However, there's also forced labor and modern slavery that are engaged with both the cutting of the forest and then the palm plantations that are planted in their place. If we can bring these siloed communities together to work together, they can try to make real progress in this area. Similarly, Mr. Chairman, we in Humanity United are working in Nepal with brick kiln owners. We're trying to provide them incentives so that they can both reduce emissions and also end child labor. However, we have to be careful about the unintended consequences of our actions, as workers who return to their village can fall into the same cycle of poverty and exploitation. Small investments in education and livelihood, as we just heard, can make our efforts to free slaves sustainable. That is why baseline measurements and strong evaluation and monitoring are critical to ensure that the interventions are actually reducing modern slavery as opposed to just displacing it. I go through, Mr. Chairman, in my testimony a number of other matters regarding partnerships, including the way the corporate sector can work with law enforcement in order to try to eliminate human trafficking through the data that they collect. But we really need to bring together private donors, governments, the private sector, civil society, and survivors together. And just in conclusion, Mr. Chairman and Senator Menendez and other members of the committee, last week marked the 150th year since the House of Representatives voted to approve the 13th Amendment, ending slavery in the United States. And this coming December, we will mark the adoption of the amendment as the law of the land. This committee can play a really instrumental leadership role in helping mark that anniversary by pushing forward the fight against human trafficking and modern slavery. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.